Before there was the United States of America, there were the colonies. And before the colonies declared independence, they had to figure out how to govern themselves under British rule. Well, that's what we're talking about today. This is Crash Course US History. When colonizers arrived in North America in the 17th century, they quickly figured out that staying alive in this new land required cooperation. So they created governing frameworks called colonial charters. Colonial charters were contracts or grants that formally established colonies and laid out rules for their operation and relations with the English crown. While all charters served as the legal basis for colonial existence, they varied widely in terms of governance, structure, autonomy, and the degree of royal control. And today we're going to look at the different types of colonial charters that were used in early America and how they shaped our political institutions. So let's get started. 3 basic types of colonial charters emerged in English North America: charter colonies, proprietary colonies, and royal colonies. These charter classifications influenced governance, political power, and local autonomy in each colony. Charter colonies began as corporate ventures or joint stock companies, authorized by royal charters to establish settlements in the New World. The earliest and most notable charter colonies include Massachusetts Bay, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and initially Virginia. In charter colonies, the colonists formed a corporate body politic, often with substantial self-government. They elected their own governors, legislatures, and local officials. Operating with less direct interference from British authorities, the colony's governance was based on the rules laid out in the charter itself, which acted as a binding contract between the Crown and the colonists. For instance, the Massachusetts Bay Colony's Charter of 1629 granted the Puritan settlers the right to govern themselves, leading to a theocratic political culture dominated by religious leaders. Connecticut's Charter of 1662 and Rhode Island's of 1663 were also notable for granting significant political liberties, which these colonies retained well into the post-Revolution period, and Rhode Island and Connecticut continued to use their charters as state constitutions. Now, the power dynamics in charter colonies often reflected the desires of wealthy shareholders or settler communities. While they had internal autonomy, the Crown retained the theoretical authority to revoke charters or convert charter colonies into royal colonies if necessary. But not all colonies were founded as charter colonies. Proprietary colonies were territories granted by the king to an individual or group, usually as a reward or debt settlement. The proprietors held almost royal powers over their colonies. They could appoint governors, establish courts, create laws, and with the Crown's approval, manage land distribution. Maryland and Pennsylvania are quintessential proprietary colonies. Maryland was granted to Cecil Calvert, the 2nd Baron Baltimore, in 1632, establishing a haven for English Catholics facing persecution. Pennsylvania, founded in 1681 by William Penn, was also a proprietary colony designed as a refuge for Quakers and others seeking religious freedom. Now, proprietors often sought to develop profitable colonies with stable populations. They offered land incentives to attract settlers and had to balance the interests of colonists with their obligations to the Crown. While proprietors wielded considerable power, colonial assemblies gained strength over time, demanding more representation and governance input. The proprietary model was a hybrid that mixed private control with emergent democratic principles as colonists pushed for local voice. The remaining type of colony was the royal colony. Royal colonies were territories under the direct control of the king. By the mid-18th century, most colonies, including Virginia, New York, New Jersey, and the Carolinas, were royal colonies. The Crown either revoked their charters or purchased them from original proprietors, bringing them fully under royal control. The royal colonies were governed by royal appointees, governors who enforced the king's policies and represented his interests. Though colonial assemblies had legislative authority and controlled taxation, ultimate executive authority rested with the Crown's appointee. The shift toward royal colonies reflected a broader imperial policy aimed at centralizing authority and increasing efficiency in colonial administration. However, this often led to friction between governors and increasingly assertive colonial legislatures, foreshadowing tensions that would contribute to the American Revolution. Now, no matter the colony type, governance included several common institutions. Governors served as chief executives, enforcing laws and representing the Crown or proprietors. They had varying degrees of power, from influential executives to mostly ceremonial figures. Then there were legislative assemblies. In most colonies, elected by male property owners, these bodies enacted laws, controlled taxation, and managed budgets. Over time, assemblies grew more powerful, representing colonial interests and pushing back against royal or proprietary authority. Finally, there were councils or advisory boards. They were appointed by the crown or governor and advised executives on policy. Councils often acted as upper legislative chambers, judicial authorities, or administrative bodies. Together, these institutions created systems of checks and balances that allowed colonists to engage in self-governance while still maintaining hierarchical control. The degree of power exercised by local legislatures often depended on the colony's charter type and the political climate. So let's look at some case studies. First, Massachusetts Bay. The Massachusetts Bay Colony was the epicenter of Puritanism and a showcase for theocratic rule. Its charter of 1629, along with subsequent charters, granted extensive powers to the colony. The Great Migration of Puritans to Massachusetts Bay in the 1630s led to a population boom and the establishment of towns and institutions. The General Court was a powerful legislative and judicial body elected by church members. It passed laws reflecting Puritan values and shaped society around those norms, even after the colony transitioned into a royal colony in 1680s. Elements of this theocratic system persisted. Next, we have Pennsylvania. Founded by William Penn as a holy experiment in religious tolerance, Pennsylvania's frame of government, established in 1681, was notably democratic for its time. Penn envisioned a province where different faiths could coexist and where representative government would flourish. The assembly elected by landowners made laws with the governor's approval, creating a framework for while not without its contradictions given the inequalities of land ownership and the displacement of Native Americans. Pennsylvania's early constitution set a precedent for representative government and the separation of powers that influenced the future of American democracy. Lastly, let's look at Virginia. Initially a charter colony under the Virginia Company, an early joint stock company, Virginia became a royal colony in 1624, after the company's charter was revoked due to its failure to turn a profit. As a royal colony, Virginia was directly controlled by the crown and its governor. However, Virginia also had a tradition of self-rule dating back to the House of Burgesses, first formed in 1619, which had significant legislative powers. This blend of royal control and local autonomy continued throughout Virginia's colonial period, shaping its political culture and contributing to its role as a leader in the American Revolution. Over time, challenges arose for colonial governments. Issues like proxy representation, taxation, religious freedom, and the validity of charters sparked conflict. The English Crown's intermittent revocation of charters or imposition of direct rule often angered colonists who had grown accustomed to self-government. One notable instance was the Dominion of New England, a short-lived period from 1686 to 1689, when King James II merged the New England colonies under royal control. Intended to tighten control and boost efficiency, the Dominion provoked resistance, especially when local legislatures were replaced and taxes were raised. It was dissolved after the Glorious Revolution, which saw James II overthrown and replaced with William and Mary. Later, royal policies like the Royal Instructions of 1763 further limited colonial autonomy, provoking colonial opposition and contributing to the growing sentiment that led to the American Revolution. In conclusion, the colonial charters and resulting governmental structures that emerged in early America laid the foundation for many of the political traditions and institutions that Americans still value today. Representative government, the rule of law, separation of powers, and local Moreover, debates over interpretations of charters enhanced the colonists' articulation of rights and provided a basis for resistance to British control. As America moved toward independence, colonial political experiences under various charter forms helped shape the drafting of state constitutions and ultimately the U.S. Constitution. Understanding these early frameworks of governance illuminates how colonial political experiences molded American democracy and how the desire for self-determination took root in early America. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment.